Larry the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, something a little different. You can see I'm in a different location here at the Lair. And I'm going to be sharing with you how a musician writes a song, the thought process that they use, some of the tools that they use to help them write music. We're going to be talking about key centers, tonality, major and minor scales, as well as relative major and relative minor, and what these things mean and how musicians use these to help them write music. I'm going to be gearing this episode towards people who have little or no musical background. Maybe you played a band instrument when you were in junior high, or maybe you've never played an instrument at all, but you're just a music fan, and you've always sort of wondered, you've heard some of these terms, maybe you've heard an artist use some of these expressions when they're talking about them writing music, and you're curious of what these things meant. So I'm going to be being general with a lot of these things, but just exposing you to these topics and trying to explain them. Now, if you're a musician that does have a background in music theory and stuff like that, I encourage you to still watch anyways. Maybe there's something that you'll be able to take from this, or maybe there's something that you'll be able to add to the conversation that you can leave in the comments down below. Okay. I was originally going, I'm still going to do this. My original thought was I was going to do a musical analysis of the song Mystery by Dio from the Last in Line album. But the video got really long because the front part of the video, I felt like I had to explain a bunch of these concepts before I could even start discussing the song Mystery. So I decided to break this up into different parts, so that way I'll be able to reference some of these videos as I go through these different steps, and people can go back and rewatch or watch these for the first time. All right, now, first thing you should understand that in music there are no set rules. You can do whatever you want to do. There's nothing that's written in concrete, but there are certain things that happen frequently, that are commonly used, that especially within certain styles of music like hard rock or heavy metal, there's certain reoccurring themes, reoccurring patterns, reoccurring motives. If you think of it like a horror movie, okay? If you have a slasher horror movie, there's going to be a lot of gore and stuff like that. There's a lot of tropes and things that you see that make a horror movie. If it's a romance movie, it's going to be something completely different, but you're going to see similar themes and stuff like that. So it's sort of like that with music. When a metal musician or a hard rock musician sits down to write something that's in the hard rock or heavy metal style, they will often pick from these certain things and use these certain tools. Okay, so in music is based around key centers, and I'm referring to what we call tonal music, meaning basically the music that we listen to in pop and rock and stuff like that. Again, there's always exceptions to the rules, but most music is based around a key center. And what that means is that there's a note or a chord that the other notes and the other chords sort of revolve around that. They react to it, if you will. The key center is home base. It's what your ear hears as the starting point or the resting point. You could also think of it that way. It's very often the first chord in a song. It's even more often the last chord in a song. Now, again, that's not always 100% true, but 95% of the time, 99% of the time. And again, it does that because that's what your ear revolves around. What your ear hears as sort of being home base. And that particular note then dictates how the other notes and chords function and operate around your key center. So in music, we have the musical alphabet goes from A to G, and then I'm doing this on the piano because it allows me to play the left hand and the right hand, bass notes and chords at the same time. The black keys represent what we call sharps and flats. So when an artist sits down and they want to write a piece of music, usually they think of a key center that they want to start with. And a lot of times that is affected by the instruments that are being used, like guitar and bass. They tend to write around the open strings on the guitar because it's easier to play certain chords. It sounds the best on the instrument, some would say. So you get a lot of key centers that are based around E, A, D, G, because those are the open strings on the guitar. If you're in a jazz band and you have brass instruments and woodwind instruments, the keys would be different. They'd be like F, B flat, E flat, because those are the keys where the horn players and the clarinet players don't have to put a lot of fingers down to sort of, say it in a simple way, the easiest notes for them to play and the notes that sound the best on their particular instruments. On the piano, a lot of times it's the key of C because it's all the white keys. You don't have to deal with any of the black keys. So I'm going to illustrate here. Let's say we decide that we're going to write a song. We decide our tonal center is going to be C. So that means that I'm going to start on a C chord, and the other chords that I play after this are going to sort of push and pull away and towards the C note. And you're going to hear here as I play how there's some, listen for the direction of what I play, how your ear is being drawn in a certain direction, being drawn back to the key center, which in this case is C. So here we go. Ear wants here, go back to. Okay, I could end the song on that chord. It sounds like it's finished, all right? Let's say I play that again, and I'm going to just stop before I get back to the key center. It could end there, but the ear wants to hear C. Think of an orchestra, a lot of orchestra pieces end with the timpani playing. Okay, so that's the key center. I can pick any note on here and make that my key center, but it's what your ear hears as home base, and the other chords are that move around that. And almost all, like hard rock, pop, most metal has a key center to it. Now, once you've decided on your key center, then you decide on the tonality that you want to use. The two most common tonalities are major and minor. There's a lot of variations, and there's variations off of the major and the minor. There's augmented, there's diminished, there's modal things. But the big ones, and the ones that are used most often in rock and pop, are major and minor. And what that means then is that you have your tonal center, and then the tonality is a fixed relationship between distance between the various notes then, a set distance between the notes that creates a certain sound, a certain feel. So I'm going to illustrate. We're going to have C is our key center, what we used before in the other example. And now I'm going to play a C major scale. Now a major scale is determine a certain set length between each of the notes. That's how I know what to play for a C major scale. There's going to be 7 different notes. Here's C major. That has a certain sound to it. A major scale has a certain sound to it. An example of a song, some people sometimes say that major has a sort of a uplifting, a happier feel to it, and that may be true. But it also can, use a certain different feel. I'll give you an example of a song that's written in a major key. Ozzy's "Goodbye to Romance." Warning here, I'm gonna sing a little bit. Yesterday has been and gone. Tomorrow will I find the sun? That's in the key of D, so there's our home center. You know how that is our note. The other notes are revolving around that, and that's in a major key. Everybody's having fun, except me, I'm alone. Okay, major key. Now, a lot of metal is in the other most common tonality, which is minor. And a minor is like a major scale. It has 7 notes in it, but the distances as we go up between the notes is slightly is slightly different. So here's our C major again. Let's see if we can hear the difference between major and minor. C major. Now, C minor, I'm going to alter some of the distance of some of the notes now to make it a minor. Okay, that's minor. It has a different feel to it, a different emotion to it. So when the musician, the artist sits down and they write a song, they think, what kind of mood am I trying to capture? And that will a lot of times dictate the tonality that they want to use. Do they want to use major, the feeling and the sound that you get from major, or do they want to use minor? Heavy metal is often very sort of brooding and dark, so it tends to use minor. And then with each of these scales, there's chords that go along with every note in the scale. There's chords that fit then with the tonality that you pick. You pick major, and you pick D major or C major. There's a set of chords then that you can pick from to make up your song. If you pick a minor, there's a set of chords that go with the minor. Now, for every major and minor scale, there's a relative minor scale. And what that means is there's a minor scale that shares the same notes. You might say, well, then if they share the same notes, how can you tell the difference between them? Well, it has to do with your key center. So let's go to G major. We're going to play a G major scale here. This is our tonality. Our key center is G. Tonality is G major. The relative minor, the minor scale that shares the same notes as this G major, is E minor. Okay, and you say, all right, well, how do I tell the difference? Well, if a song is based around E minor, okay, key center in that case was E minor. In G major, the G major is going to be my key center. Yeah, there's G major as our key center. That sounds like something, right? Because that's a very common sequence of chords in a major key, and it sounds like it could be like Knocking on Heaven's Door. It could be a million different songs. Now, sometimes what the artist does is they can move from, let's say they start off in the minor, and they can move to the relative major. Start off in a minor key. They pick their key center, let's say E minor. That's a very common heavy metal key center because it matches the lowest string on open string on the guitar. They will play part of the song in the minor, and then they will move to the relative major. So in the case of E minor, the relative major is G major. G major shares the same notes as E minor. Okay, an example of that is Wasted Years by Iron Maiden. The verse is in minor. I close my eyes and think of home. Another city goes by in the night. Ain't it funny how it ends? You never miss it till it's gone. We're in E minor here. And the heart is lying still. It will be to my dying day. Now the chorus is going to go to the relative major, and listen to how it lifts. Okay, I'm going to start backing up a little. And then it will be to my dying day. Chorus, G major. So understand the wasted time, always searching for those wasted years. Back to the relative major, very lifting up. It's like it lifts up, right? So that's a common musical tool. You start off in the minor, and for the chorus where you want it to feel like it lifts up and it gets a little bit bigger, you move to the relative major. Another example of that would be Bon Jovi's "Living on a Prayer." It's got that bass line going, and then the verse is in E minor, just like "Wasted Years." Tom used to work on the docks. Union's been on strike, he's down on his luck. It's true, so true, so true. Right, and then the chorus of the song eventually comes up with "Whoa, halfway there." Here comes the major lift. Living on a prayer. These are relative major. Take my hand and we'll make it, I swear. Back to minor. So he wants the verse to be sort of more brooding, a little more darker sounding, but he wants that uplifting part in the chorus. Alright, so there again, those are tools that people use to help shape and make the sound or the mood that they're trying to get across in the song. Now, there's other things that artists can do. They can take these minor and major scales, and you can alter just one or two notes in a minor scale to give you another tonality, a tonality based off of the minor, but slightly different. For instance, Gates of Babylon uses something that's called a modal. It's like a minor, but it's got one altered note on it. It's a Phrygian scale, so you get this sound. Okay, gives it a very sort of Middle Eastern, Egyptian sound. Right? Fits the theme of the song, right? You know, Gates of Babylon, and this has sort of that. Okay, that's what's called a modal thing. It's based off of the minor scale. So these are all things that artists use then to help them shape the mood of the song. Gates of Babylon, they want something that has that kind of feel to it, so he uses a particular scale then, and those are the notes. He picks a key center, E, and then he picks a tonality. In this case, it's a modal thing, Phrygian, based off of the minor scale. And those are something, it's a whole other topic, but I just wanted to give that example. Now, sometimes you don't have to move just from the relative major to the relative minor, from the relative minor to the relative major, back and forth, right? Because I remember I said that they all share the same notes. If you want something a little more dramatic, you can just do a sudden shift just to a completely different key center, okay? And an example of that would be "Keep It Warm" from Born Again, Black Sabbath, Born Again. It starts off in G minor. And I can't really play this guitar riff exactly like this on the piano, but it's something like... Sweet woman, are you feeling right? Okay, it's in G minor. What was it that you did last night? You made me crazy. You make it. He's going back and forth in G minor. It's very much in G minor here. Now, the relative major of G minor would be B flat major. That would share the same notes as G minor. If we did the same formula that "Living on a Prayer" and "Wasted Years" did, which both started in minor, went to the relative major, we would go to B flat major. But Black Sabbath doesn't do that. So they're in G minor, and they're going to change the key center to C major, which is related, which is a completely different key center than the G minor. So back to the G minor. What's the matter with me? And I was born free. And I can leave you alone. I'm leaving now and I'll be coming home. Because it's not the relative major minor, this is a very dramatic change. Keep it warm, rest, place by your side. relative major. They just modulate to a completely different, unrelated key center. In this case, C major, and then it drops back down to. So when it drop back down to the verse, it's very dramatic. It has a much different feel to it, you know. C major. Keep it warm, rest, place by your side. So that's an example of an artist going for a really dramatic effect. Like the chorus is like just something, whoa, it takes us to somewhere different. Our key center moves to something not related to the minor key that we're in there in G minor. It's you get a little bit more advanced with something like that. C major is somewhat. It's very common. It's a common thing for people to move down 5 notes, and that's what they're doing right here. They're going G, F, E, D, C. That's kind of a common modulation. So it's not totally out there. It's something that people do when they're going to move to a completely different tonal center. Key center, I mean, they'll often sometimes do it 5 notes away from wherever the starting key center is. Okay, so there you go. There is key center, the note that our ear hears as being home base, and the other chords and notes are sort of revolving around that. And by where we place the chords and notes around our key center, it creates tension and push and pull and direction in the song. Have you ever heard a song for the first time and you can just tell the chorus is coming up next, you know, in the song, because you're being directed to that by your ear. The chords that they're using are directing you back to the key center. The tonality, in this case we discussed major and minor. That tells you the overall feel around our key center, the fixed duration, distances of notes around our key center gives us a certain sound. We talked about major, Goodbye to Romance, Knocking on Heaven's Doors in a major key. I could go on, you know, Green Day, Time of Our Life, that's in a major key. I mean, there's tons of things that are in major. We talked about minor tonalities, very common in heavy metal and hard rock, and we talked about relative major, which is the major tonality that shares the same notes as its relative minor. For every minor scale, there's a relative major that shares the same notes. For every major scale, there's a relative minor that shares the same notes. All right, so these are all things that musicians and artists use to help create direction, anticipation, to help draw your ear in and keep your attention. A badly written song is a song that doesn't go anywhere. It feels like it's just sitting there. You can't feel it doing anything. It's sort of like a bad movie with no plot. It's just stuff's happening. You don't know what's going on. A good movie has you on the edge of your seat. You're anticipating what's coming next. And sometimes artists can fool you. They can make your ear think it's going to go to this direction, but then they shift it here, like that Black Sabbath song was an example of that. Instead of going to, we were in G minor, instead of going to the relative major to G minor, which would have been a common thing to do, they do something completely different and shift the key center to C major, and so it sort of gives your ear sort of this surprise to your ear. Okay, all right, there you go. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. If you have any comments that you think can help clarify this for people, please leave them in the comments down below. I'm going to be doing another video on Dio's Mystery, where we're going to be talking about relative major, relative minor, as well as another concept called the parallel minor. All right, so thanks. Hope you enjoyed this and hope you can get something from this. Until we see you again, make sure you rock hard.